because they threaten you with hell if you don't behave properly, or because you want to be admired. And you can think, to yourself, well, I don't have motivations like that. I really love other people. Under certain circumstances, yes, you do. But you could be put to the test, and certain circumstances might arise where you don't love other people at all. So, the attitude of the Taoists as against the Confucians was that all this discussion of righteousness and propriety and so on was doing nothing but getting mankind deeper and deeper and deeper into trouble. So Lao Tzu says, when the great Tao lost, that is to say, when people no longer followed the natural way, the course of nature, there came duty to man and right conduct. When there were troubles in the state, we began to hear of loyal statesmen. When the family was deranged, we began to hear of filial sons and daughters. And so it seems to be saying, in a very odd way, that it's the rules that make the trouble. And ordinary common sense tells us that the trouble comes first and then thereafter the rules. Because things have gone astray and people, the elders say, oh, the young are going to the dogs, we have to lay down the law to them. But it is not as simple as that. You can see, I saw a headline the other day which said, cops riot in Haight-Ashbury. And there is a very curious thing whereby, after a while, the law, that is to say, authority and crime, form an alliance with each other. And the more you attempt to suppress crime, the more you stir it up. So that I just want to ask you to consider what kind of person would volunteer for service on a vice squad. And you have a criminal, obviously. You have a very deranged person. And so we tend, you see, as time goes on, that official types, people who are enforcement officers, begin to be the same kind of people as criminals. So that the law enforcement and crime reinforce each other all the time. They have an alliance. It's a symbiotic relationship. Because lots of symbiotic relationships are contests. And so eventually what happens is that the government is the most successful group of gangsters. The ones, and when we know, we only have to read the history of Europe to realize that places like France and England and Germany, so on, particularly Italy, they were originally just bands of brigands. And certain brigand got stronger and stronger and stronger, and at last he was the government. And it still goes on. So the Taoists were trying to say to governors, look, lay off. Please leave things alone. Their idea, you see, Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching as a manual of advice to emperors. And he says, in other words, that the emperor, although he is above the people, they should not feel his weight. Govern a great state as you cook a small fish. In other words, if you have a small fish like smelts in the frying pan, you don't keep jostling them with a pancake turner, because the fish will just fall apart. You have to cook it very gently. See, less cooking is better than more. That's how the Chinese produce such beautiful vegetables. They hardly cook them at all. They have a method of heating them through very quickly and then serve it at once so that they're very crisp. Less cooking is better than more. So, less law. When about 250 BC, a new dynasty came into power in China, It was called the Han Dynasty. And it followed the Qing Dynasty. The Qing Dynasty lasted for 15 years. The Han lasted for 500. Qing Dynasty was a dictatorship. And this grandiose military emperor was going to found a dynasty that would last for 1,000 years. And he legalized in every direction. He made laws and laws and laws and caused only the right books to be allowed. Most of them were burned, and heaven only knows. When the Han Dynasty came in, they simply wrote all the laws off the books. They repealed everything. They kept about 2 laws against robbery and murder or something like that. And that was it. They wrote them all off. And that was one of the most stable and creative epochs in Chinese culture. So it was very close to anarchy. And you must understand what anarchy is in the true sense. Anarchy is not someone with a grizzly beard and a bomb running around trying to blow up airplanes and stop the public functioning. Anarchy in the West was invented by Prince Kropotkin, who was a great Russian aristocrat who had a theory about that the state is simply a nuisance, and that there simply should be no government in that sense at all. So that, in other words, if you're driving down the road and you see a rock on the road, you don't wait for the Department of Highways to get rid of it. You just stop your car and shove it over. And if everybody does things like that, you see, then things will go along and everybody will feel responsible because there's no government to say, you do it. See? Now, when you start thinking about that, you realize there's probably something to be said for it. But you can't take it quite literally. Because of karma, that is to say, because once you've started to interfere with the course of events, you're stuck with it. It's like it's an awful sticky business for us to get ourselves out of Vietnam. Once we've interfered there, see, we're terribly involved in all sorts of ways. And sometimes, of course, it is better, you know. It's like a marriage where both husband and wife are trying desperately to make the marriage work. And as a result of that, they get more involved and more involved and more involved with each other until they're both living in a wall-to-wall trap and loathe each other. And the only thing is to simply go in and break it up.